Welcome to Birken Forest Monastery's live stream. I'm Ajahn Sona. And today we will be switching to a different questioner. Piyadasi, who normally has been asking the questions that are submitted in the chat bar, has left the studio. She is, I think, having brunch in Ontario. If you are listening, Pia, we appreciate your years of service. So Pia is the secretary and also on the board secretary-treasurer for 9 years. And so when we started this live stream in 2021, she was the voice that you got used to, questioning, giving the questions, reading out the questions. And but much deserved a retirement in Ontario. So she's 3 hours ahead of Pacific time. And she told me that she would be out for a well-deserved brunch. I recommend the eggs ranchero, the huevos rancheros, or the avocado toast. So you will hear a new voice today, and that voice, the name of that voice is Metta, this anonymous voice in the background, Metta, who has been here for 6 years. Yeah. So let's begin with the first question, Metta.
Yes, Ajahn, and sending all good wishes to Piyadasi and much appreciation. The first question is from Nils from Brazil. Dear Ajahn, how to draw the line between forgiving someone's unskillful behavior one more time versus avoiding a fool?
Well, sometimes it's just a matter of reluctance to realize that, that distance is required in the relationship. By the way, they can work together. Forgiveness is always a good idea. So what forgiveness means is that it's not that you approve of anybody's behavior or anything like that. You're unburdening yourself of negative feelings. So what you're really saying in saying, I forgive you, means that I refuse to carry any weight from the less than cordial aspect of this relationship. And this applies to whether, some sort of severe injury has been done or whether it's just a mild disagreement. It's always good to forgive, and it's for your sake. The person, if a person has done you wrong, they have to face the consequences of that karmically. And there really is no escape from that. But you will also have karmic consequences if you fail to eliminate the negative attitude from your own mind, from your own emotional system. So this is why forgiveness is the nature. It's a naive reaction. Vindictiveness, revenge, hateful thoughts towards somebody who has done you wrong are natural. You even see it in animals. They will hold a grudge for a long time. But this is a very poor tactic. So people of high intelligence, high emotional development over the years have... this would include certain philosophical schools and so forth, have realized that it's only you that is carrying the burden. Your worst enemy cannot do you any more harm than your own mind. So you don't want to turn your own mind into your worst enemy. So forgiveness is always appropriate, but whether to stay in the relationship or maintain the relationship is another matter. And the Buddha does say, to unburden yourself of association with the foolish is a blessing in life, is something that relieves a lot of weight on you. Many people have various reasons for staying in relationships with people who are foolish. And foolish would be that those who are not virtuous characters, who manipulate or just let you down all the time or take advantage of you or unscrupulous, etc. So this kind of relationship should be severed and give yourself some distance from it. People are reluctant to do this because it's the familiar sometimes. Quite often, though, if you listen to the stories of people that they finally get out of these relationships, they always say, "Why didn't I do it earlier?" So, yeah, to value your own time, being very, very discriminating in who you associate with. You are not to just ramble around indifferently in society. And some people have an idea, I think it's left over a bit from Christianity, of just rambling around, associating with various sinners, etc., as a kind of a means to correcting them or helping them along the way. But usually what really happens is that unless you're very, very skillful, they will just drain your energies and not change whatsoever. So be very discriminating and aloof, valuing your time, and there's no need to explain to people why your time is valuable. Sometimes people value their own time but dismiss the value of your time. So your time is valuable, and it's not whether you make $5 an hour or $500 an hour. That's not how you determine whether your time in your life is valuable. It is simply as valuable as you decide it is. So you come out with a new attitude and think, why was I ever thinking that somebody else's life has priority over mine? Why would that be? It's not the case. You and then, of course, seek association with those whose time you spend with them is not regretted, and in fact refreshes and educates you. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next question.
The next question is from the live stream from Quasator from Melbourne, Australia. Does an anagami feel any sexual attraction?
Anagami is the third stage of enlightenment. It means non-returner. It is very close to the end of samsara. It's actually inevitable, so it's an irreversible attainment of wisdom and insight. And in that stage, zero sexual desire is present. So that's the quick answer to that.
Ajahn, the next question is from Laurie Strill. Bhante, if you could interview Sakka, what questions would you ask him?
Sakka is a character in Indian mythology, although it's not necessary that that this being called Sakka doesn't exist. Mythology and cosmology is not less necessarily just fiction. Sakka is kind of a royalty amongst the devas. In the Christian cosmology, we don't have gods. You have it in the Greek cosmology. You have the gods on Mount Olympus and so forth. Also in Vedic cosmology, kind of the basis of what is now called sort of Hinduism. You also have these beings appearing in Buddhist cosmology as well. In Christianity, they usually call these beings angels. And there's a hierarchy. And I guess in Christianity as well, there is a hierarchy of angels. And so this Sakka is fairly high up in the hierarchy of these devas. Deva means shining one. You can see the connection in the words. The word deva is a Pali word. This Pali language is more or less the vernacular, the common language of the area that the Buddha is from, north central India, northeast central India, and it's affiliated with other European languages, so Latin and Greek. You see the word deus as the Latin for gods. So deva and deus, etc., and deity, etc. These are all connected in the roots of the language, the Indo-European languages, and they're often referred to as shining ones. In modern parlance, we call people in Hollywood stars. So that's the kind of the shining ones. They're shining, some sort of beauty or special capacities are shining out of them. So this being seems to be quite content, and the Buddha visits Sakka, talks to Sakka, and is attempting to make Sakka aware of the limits of being a chief of the gods, that you're still subject to mortality. So I would also ask Sakka why, I would say to Sakka, has your attitude to life changed since your meetings with the Buddha, which happened a mere 2,500 years ago? These devas are in a realm of extraordinary long life. They're not immortal. They are mortal. They have just extended lifespans. So, as we see in the universe, some life forms live longer than other life forms. I understand there are some sharks, northern sharks, that have lifespans of 550 years, quite astonishing. Some sort of bacterial have, almost infinite lifespans. But all beings are mortal in the end. So these has the concern for the samsaric nature of existence. Does it concern you, Sakka? Some of the devas accept the idea of their own mortality. Some of them don't, and so that they, just as on planet Earth amongst humans, you have these odd sects and groups of people that don't accept the normal view of reality. So there are, in fact, of course, immortalists. There's a whole network of California immortalists. They're looking for cryogenic this and that. They're going to download into a computer, and then there's people whom I believe they're immortal as well. They're just delusory, and there's people that hold flat Earth beliefs and that the Earth is 6,000 years old, and all this kind of stuff. Right in the midst of a whole societies that hold completely different views. So apparently it goes on in the heavens as well, in the afterlife. Whole groups of denialists about their own mortality, etc., and others that accept it. They have a view that allows the the fact of that heaven is not eternal. And so I would ask Sakka if he has processed this this fact of the nature of existence, the inevitable demise of his own position, and his journeying on in samsara, and whether this causes anxiety in him or not. Okay, next question, Metta.
The next question is from the live stream from Zuri from Cambridge, United Kingdom. I'm reading the Samyutta Nikaya straight through. Is this a good approach, or would you recommend a different strategy?
Zuri, I recommend that you get back to your thesis and quit avoiding doing your homework. Next, you'll be asking me about recipes for making apple pies and whether you should be making apple pies from scratch or not. So, aside from this little jest, so Zuri, I know Zuri for a long time. He used to come to the monastery, and now he's doing his PhD on some sort of Aristotelian theories in one of the major universities in England. And doing a PhD is a drag. I don't think it's an endurance contest, and to see if you can last through it. And it's not easy. And so, however, yes, the major collections of the suttas, if you have the capacity to read these things, I think it's great to read them straight through. Take your time and read whole collections, but also make notes. And in the old days when I did this, I had to write notes down, scribble them into a notebook and underline things. Now we have all kinds of technology to instantly zap certain interesting passages into some sort of electronic device. So it's quite wonderful in terms of that we can shorten the activity and save the essentials that mean something to us. So it's a good practice, but of course, I would say don't use it at. We have priorities in our life, and for me, Dhamma is the priority. I set Aristotle aside, but although I have to inform myself about Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle in some ways because I need to compare them to the teachings of the Buddha, and it just happens to be my an interest of mine that I like to, speaking to a Western audience that is, whether they know it or not, rooted in Greek philosophy. And I think it's important that we help the culture understand the relationship to Buddhism through the comparisons with the roots of Western civilization, which are the Greek philosophers, and Christianity as well. So I not all monks would spend time doing this, but I have spent a bit of time doing this as well. So we wish you well in your studies and the progress in your both reading the Samyutta Nikaya. Samyutta Nikaya, by the way, is connected sayings of the Buddha. It's 1,500 pages long with notes and so forth. So it is a substantial amount of reading for those who are wondering what this word Samyutta and Nikaya mean. Okay, let's go to the next question.
The next question is from Moria from California, United States. I teach young children, and sometimes this requires giving consequences for misbehavior. I find this brings up guilt and stress even when I do not act in anger. What is a wise way to handle this?
Well, this is prescribed even in monastic orders. Novices, you can enter the robes as early as about 9 years old, 8 years old. And so you're going to leave your family and be amongst these monks, these men. You can't be a fully ordained bhikkhu, monk, until you're 20, but you can be a novice before that. And so you got these boys sometimes in the community, and they're 10 or 12, and they are still children, so you have to have discipline with them. Now, what's interesting is it's so far ahead of its time. It's forbidden to have any kind of corporal punishment. You can't strike them, hit them, etc. But tasks are allowable. So, maybe sweeping up the yard or picking up garbage or things like this or washing the bedding or something like this is you can assign them work tasks. And you have to correct them as well. They can't get away with misbehavior. They will be corrected and asked to listen and change their behavior, and they'll be asked if they understood what was being said and did they hear it, and then they should acknowledge that, yes, I heard it and I will change my behavior. So this is necessary. You can't just let kids do what they want. That's what adults are for. It's a great decline in civilization when children are telling adults what to do and or just being disrespectful and so forth. So it's just not kind to anybody to do this, and it catches up. I haven't been in the West and the East and so forth. I really have the types of behavior that kids in the West do compared to the kids in Asian societies is very different. And I find that the Asian kids are much better behaved, more mature and so forth. And whatever the attitude is, this kind of spoiled kid behavior is pretty regrettable, and it's not a favor to them at all. Behaving yourself as a kid is not depriving you of childhood or anything like that. Acting out and so forth, being silly and so forth, is not a freedom, a childish freedom or anything like that. It's much better that they learn from adults. Now, what happens is, of course, they go to school and they're amongst their peers and they're learning from other 7-year-olds and so forth. This is not who you should be learning from. You should be learning from mature adults. So if you're a teacher in those situations, then you should not feel guilty at all. You should feel that it's not kind at all to let them get away with these things. You have to call them to order and explain it to them so that they understand. The explanation is that, if you behave like this, people will not like you. You want to be liked and accepted by people and your friends and so forth. And if you keep up this kind of behavior, then people will reject you. So you don't want to do that for your own sake. And others will not appreciate you. They will not have respect for you if you keep up this kind of stuff. So we're trying to make them good citizens and respectable people, And it's not depriving them of any kind of freedom. Yeah.
The next question is from Tracy from Las Vegas, United States. Is it possible to host a monk?
Yes, people do it all the time. Monks travel and they stay at people's houses. They are invited to give talks and retreats in various places, so they are quite often received by lay people. It's good to, including the Buddha, like the Buddha traveled around and stayed in people's garden sheds and stuff like this. there is a rule that you're not supposed to really stay under the same roof with lay people, lay women particularly. I mean, as monks, you're not supposed to stay under the same roof with them. And lay men, you're allowed to stay up to 3 days under the same roof, or even share a room with them, up to 3 days, but not longer than that. But in modern times, with things like hotels, and if there's a door that locks and so forth, that gives privacy and etc., then it's usually okay. So you should find out, though, if you want to invite a monk for some sort of situation, you write to the community. The community usually decides this rather than the individual monk. The community says, well, we have an invitation from a layperson to go to such and such a place, and they requested such and such a monk. Does the community approve of this? If they do, then it's good to kind of find out what the monk's preferences are. Some monks really don't want to chit-chat or do any activities. They prefer to just be left alone, perhaps offered a meal, etc. And you should find out how to offer food, when the appropriate times are. Monks don't eat afternoon. They don't eat regular food afternoon. They must be finished their meal by noon. And they don't eat before dawn. So sometime in that 5 or 6 hour period, they need to eat their day's worth of food, and that needs to be appropriately offered by the lay people. It's not just a light lunch. People don't understand that what people eat for lunch is not appropriate for the monk, because the monk's not going to eat dinner and so forth. So they have to have their daily calories offered. Some monks would like to go, would you like to go out to a park or a garden, or go down to the ocean? Would you like to go on a sailboat, or would you like to take a walk in the park? But they can't go out to like entertainments, like a show, or a singing and dancing and that kind of stuff. That's not appropriate for monks. So what you need to do is find out how to host a monk. Yeah. I think some of the monasteries in the West probably have a guidebook for people how to host a monk. So if they don't, they should have it. Yeah. In Asia, it's very, very often that lay people host monks, but quite often they're raised Buddhist. They know all about monks. Maybe some of their relatives have been monks. Their brother or their uncle or so forth is a monk. They know all about the intricacies of the relationship and so forth. So it's a very rich and interesting intertwined culture between the monastics and the lay people. So it's good to find out about this, yeah. Make it part of one's life, yeah.
The next question is from Jason from New Jersey, United States. Dear Ajahn, what is the difference between consciousness and the 6 sense bases' independent origination?
Consciousness is the root of is what makes the 6 sense bases active. There is you need the 6 sense. So eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind are the 6 sense bases. And then there's consciousness of these 6. Consciousness is, so if you're not conscious, you can have an eye, but it's not, there's no sight. So in order for sight consciousness to arrive, you must have an eye. There must be some object which the eye sees, and there must be consciousness. I consciousness. By the way, so consciousness, this is how consciousness is described in Buddhism. There are sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, consciousness. It's consciousness of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mental activities. It's gone into in great detail in the Abhidhamma, so there are various types of consciousness, up to 121 types of consciousness. So, the consciousness of a memory of sights, and imaginary anticipation of future sights, present sights, etc., accompanied by pleasant feeling, neutral feeling, unpleasant feeling. It's quite, they more or less take it apart. It's what modern psychology, I suppose, does, is examines in intense detail the experience of the sensory, the sensory activity of the mind. And then there's also, in dependent origination, this structure of cause and effect, how things are, why things are the way they are in the development of a being, in the traveling of a being in samsara, the birth and death and lives of a being, what are the causal structures in these? So this is what science does these days. How does the universe form? How do planets form? How long is the sun going to last? How did it come into being? How will it go out of being? What happens after that? Biological inquiries. What are the mechanisms that produce birth? In the union of the sperm and egg and so forth, and all this is Western ideas of science as cause and effect. So this is the cause and effect at the time of the Buddha. The consciousness is the most mysterious thing, and to this day, for Western philosophy and neuroscience and so forth, there are all endless seminars and meetings about what is consciousness. What is that stuff? And yet it's the most direct experience of life. It's the only thing that we know for sure, our own consciousness. We are conscious. The rest of the world out there, we're not sure of. The rest of reality, we're not sure of. But consciousness can't be denied. The consciousness that's mentioned in the dependent origination is quite frequently relinking consciousness. So it's a kind of consciousness that is a series of moments, infinitesimal moments that are transmitting information in this life and through into the next life. By the way, so this idea of reincarnation, from a Buddhist point of view, reincarnation needs to be re-explained in some ways. We think our self or our soul jumps out of the body and goes to the same soul that's in our body goes out into the next body. But the Buddha says this is a very naive idea. It's an understandable idea. It's kind of an intuitive feeling that we have a self. But he says that when on an examination we don't have a self, we don't have a soul. But it doesn't mean that there's that nothing happens when you die. It's just the same process which goes on in this life just continues. That's all. There is no self or soul in this life, but there is a process of consciousness, a series of moments, of types of information, which has a causal explanation. And that doesn't just cease at death, it continues. It's not the same consciousness, it's not identical moment to moment, it's in fact very definitely not identical moment to moment. But the word identical is very interesting. Identity, what's your identity? So this is a big thing in modern culture. I identify as this, I identify as that. Buddhism is very much undermining all identities. Identity means something that persists in time unchanged, something that continues in time unchanged. And when inquired into it, we don't find any such thing. There is no such thing as that which persists in time unchanged. So much for identity, which leaves us in a very fluid condition. We are a fluid, not a substance. We're not a solid, we're a fluid. Okay, so we'll leave it at that and go on to the next question.
The next question is from the live stream from Katarzyna. What is noble silence?
Well, noble silence is a term that we use in retreats. We ask everybody to maintain noble silence, meaning don't talk. But actually, that's not noble silence. That's just silence. You don't have to be very noble not to talk. So cows don't talk. So are they maintaining noble silence? No. Noble silence, true noble silence, is silence of the mind. And you attain noble silence probably officially in the second jhana. And so people at retreats really should be asked, please don't talk. Noble silence really should be a silence of the mind, because most people during a retreat are talking to themselves, chattering. The mind is chattering away, having all kinds of uncensored kind of thoughts and reactions and drifting into memories and so forth. And so that's hardly silence. Most people complain about the noise of the mind. The mind is noisy rather than silent. And sleep does not qualify as noble silence either. It's silent, but it's not noble. So noble silence is particular, extraordinary command over the activities of the mind. And so that is the kind of the true essence of what we call noble silence. Yeah.
The next question from the live chat is from Cristiano. Dear Ajahn, could you please expand on the use of verbalizations in the practice of samatha, and if their use is suitable in daily activities like, for example, repetitive work? Are there suttas where the Buddha instructs on this?
Repetitive verbalizations, it sounds like you're talking about mantras. And certainly in Thailand, I did encounter, of course, in the forest tradition, they have this repetition of the single word Buddho. Buddho, meaning the Buddha, So quite often it's given as a kind of meditation mantra, Buddha, you kind of repeating it to yourself silently in activities during the day. I've never used it myself, and I don't find it in the suttas particularly. More or less, it's the activity of reminding yourself on a moment-to-moment basis, which is mindfulness, is remindfulness, is calling to mind your determinations in life and what kind of boundaries you have. So mindfulness, quite often taught in the West, is kind of this mere observation of whatever's going on. But mindfulness really, and I've gone to great extent to explain this. I've written a whole book on this called, here, What Comes Before Mindfulness? What comes before mindfulness? Effective effort, how to garden your inner life. And why it is, well, I'm explaining what comes before mindfulness is because you can't understand mindfulness if you don't know what it's supposed to be doing, it's not simply paying attention. It is a form of memory of some very specific determinations that you've made, and you are to carry out these correct efforts through the practice of mindfulness. And it is to undo and eliminate unwholesome tendencies of the mind, and to cultivate and strengthen wholesome tendencies of the mind. So this is this is the repetitive mental activity. It may not take place in the form of verbalizations, except for internal verbalizations. You're recalling admonishments and advocacies that you find in the suttas by the Buddha, and you're applying them on a regular and repetitive basis in the midst of your activities. So mindfulness is remembrance, is recollection, and it is also informed awareness, not merely awareness, informed, deliberate awareness. So you can see, like, somebody is hired to count traffic, for instance, counting cars. They want to know how many cars go down a street at a certain time, so they usually hire university students to stand on this by the lamp post and write it on a sheet of paper or something like that. That's mere observation. And note that some of the people are speeding, some of them are going too slow, etc. Now, that's not what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is the policeman on the corner with the radar gun. And if he notices that you're disobeying the law and speeding, he will stop you. So that's mindfulness. Mindfulness is not recording or observing. It is enforcement. It is, first of all, you can't enforce anything if you're not aware of it. So they have all kinds of gadgets for increasing awareness, radar and so forth. High awareness and then enforcement. And so this is what any kind of repetitive verbalizations and so forth are to help you establish this. Mantras, though, are not really part of early Buddhist practice. It comes in the repetition of deity names or something like this, but it's not really a part of early Buddhist practice. Yeah.
The next question from the live chat is from Indian. Ajahn, what are some skillful ways to face job interviews where everyone exaggerates and not doing so risks not getting the job?
Yes. I was in music in my early days, and you kind of have to advertise yourself, but it's very uncomfortable for musicians to boast about their prowess and so forth. You usually have an agent that does that. Somebody else, it's like your mother, they're just they think you're just wonderful, and they'll say, oh, he's so smart, and he's so this and that, and it's best to leave it to somebody else to do that. So in all situations, you really shouldn't exaggerate, but you should be able to say, if you have good features, good things, be truthful about it and put it forth. Some people have a poor opinion of themselves. They feel very shy about describing their good points. That's something they got to get over. You have to have an accurate view of yourself and assessment of yourself. And in working for somebody, you have to tell them, this is what I can do. This is what I do well. And no bones about it. And it's a different format than, it's also recommended for, in Buddhism, how to take care of another monk. The monk that is sick has an obligation to report their symptoms accurately. not to pretend they don't exist or to exaggerate them. So in this sense, the interview is the same as a patient being interviewed by a doctor. Please don't conceal your ailments, and please don't exaggerate them. Respond in a balanced and truthful way to the questions. That's how you do it. And it shouldn't be done any other way, because if you fake your way into a job and you can't handle it, you'll just be under pressure and eventually it'll catch up with you. Okay, Metta.
The next question is from the question bar from Liam. I'm 29, meditating for a decade, facilitating some groups, attending retreats often. I find myself wanting to sell all my stuff. What are your thoughts on this scenario?
I don't, unless you're going to become a monk, don't sell all your stuff. It's a bad idea. You need stuff. Sorry. No, it would be nice if we just had a platinum credit card and just went naked in the world and with just one you got to eat and bathe and sleep. Where are you going to do this? You got to wear clothes, stuff like that. That's stuff. And by the way, monks need that as well. So they're told at their ordination, you're going to require 4 types of requisites: food, shelter, medicine, and clothing. And you are legitimately to seek for these things to a limited degree, and you should be satisfied with the minimum, But for a layperson, you have to actually arrange all of these things. And so you can't do without these things. However, you might want to simplify. You might have excessive possessions that are more of a burden than a help to you. So you have to decide. There's this new movement. Well, it's not new. It's an ancient movement really called minimalism. So listen to the advice of minimalists that say, it's just having enough. And by the way, that's kind of the supreme measure of wisdom is what is enough? Where do I draw the line? What is enough? And you can be brilliant but not know the answer to what is enough. So that's the question that you need to hold, the puzzle question for yourself. What is enough? What is adequate? What is supportive of my life? What gives me freedom? And what impedes me? What burdens me? So that's the question. Yeah.
The next question from the live stream is from Rachel from Ontario. You mention in breath meditation instructions that calm mind is indicated by slow breath. What do you think about effort to slow and calm the breath?
Yeah, so what happens in breath meditation or in any kind of samadhi or concentration practice, one of the signs that absolutely inseparable from the experience of this one-pointedness, this focused mind, is that the respirations per minute go down. The moments of the respiration quite often is long, and then there's a period of time when you don't have to inhale. It's just because the brain takes up so much oxygen, and when you're not using certain parts of it, the prefrontal cortex, I think, is quite overused in modernity, and many people don't even know there's other parts of the brain or other ways of being conscious. So if you find your way into this other way of being conscious without excessive discursive activity, sort of inner mental chatter and imagination and memory going on, your respiration will slow right down. Can you do it in the reverse? Can you slow your breathing down and then get an effective concentration. You can to some degree, and that's some of the yoga types, Iyengar yoga, where they stretch, they hold their breath for periods of time while stretching, and then they exhale and hold it out while stretching, and then they inhale and hold it while stretching. That has a kind of quieting effect on the mind, and so you can do this reverse type thing. By the way, there is no yoga in Buddhist teachings in terms of the Pali Canon, the early Buddhist teachings. There is no indication of any kind of stretching exercises or holding the breath. It's purely a yoga of the mind. But the other, I have done that. I've done this. I've done Tai Chi. I've done Iyengar yoga and so forth. And they both have their benefits, especially for, I think, Western minds. Western minds are really scattered and accelerated and so forth. We live in an overstimulated society, so it's a long ways to get to samadhi for most Westerners. So they can benefit sometimes from these yoga things. But yeah, go to yoga classes and teachings and so forth. It might help slow it down. But eventually, it is a feature of mind. The mind itself does this without needing the physical apparatus as well. Okay. One last question, Metta.
Yes, Ajahn, the last question for today is from Duk Duk from California, United States. Dear Bhante, I sometimes have fears of old coworkers, friends, or partners from the past sabotaging me. I feel it is a sort of paranoia. Any advice to alleviate this? I try to end things respectfully and amicably, but sometimes these people can have a history of being vindictive that I don't find out until afterwards.
Yeah. The best defense is to imagine that you have a kind of, you conjure a mirror in the air, a kind of a bubble over you, a mirrored bubble. And that is karma. So you realize that you're protected by your goodwill. And all ill will or vindictiveness directed towards you is reflected back in a very painful way to the person who projects it towards you. So your best defense is not to concern yourself with this, but to radiate goodwill for yourself and for all beings, and in fact, the consequences of negative emotions radiated towards you are much more painful for those who radiate or are vindictive towards you. It's a shield. Your shield is fearlessness and goodwill towards yourself and towards others. And if anybody dares radiate negative thoughts or emotions towards you, it's reflected back in a severe way towards them. So this is your defense. This is your the way you deal with this. It's their problem. They should understand it's dangerous to radiate ill will to you. Dangerous. And you should understand that your best protection is it's not your problem. It's their problem. And they will get the results of their problematic activities of the mind and emotions. You are free and protected. Yeah, you stay in the bubble of goodwill. Okay, so I was talking with Metta just before we started our video, and I was saying I was looking at the views from last week, and there were less views than normal. And I said, I wonder why that is. And yet there were more views live, like watching live, and then less views as the week went on. And then she told me, well, it's because there's a lot of news out there, a lot of hot news. Everybody's glued to their screens of sorting through all of this turmoil and news. And at the same time, maybe one goes to the live stream because it's a refuge from that disturbing news. So that seems to be the explanation.
It also occurred to me that it's spring break.
Spring break. So I don't know how many of our watchers are students, but the parents of the students, I don't know. So anyway, it's a cluster of causes in a way. It's interesting to see. So we will be signing off, and we waved goodbye to Piyadasi in Ontario.